Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Album Cover with Jarrell Mason, where I get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a man who I've known for years, since my days at UNCG. Shout out to CJ, who is DJ Ern's cousin. We're former co-workers, and I'm going to try to keep a straight face during this interview because there's going to be a lot of inside jokes, a lot of funny stuff. So if you hear me laughing during this interview, you know why. I'm with the one and only DJ Ern on Beyond the Album Cover. Welcome, DJ Ern.
Yo, what's happening? What's happening, J Mace?
Man,
been a minute.
I know it's been a minute, man. I moved out to the other side of the country, and I hardly get to talk to you no more, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. I see you doing your thing over there, though. I'm proud of you, homie. Like you're doing big things over there on the west side.
Nah, man, I'm trying to get like you, man.
Get like me.
I'm trying
to be little DJ North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm trying to be big time like DJ Ern put out a TNT mixtape.
Yeah. I haven't put out a TNT. It's probably been about 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years since I put out a TNT series.
Yeah, you should put out a Quarantine and Chill mixtape or something, because I know that DJs right now are bone dry because clubs are not open depending on where you are. And then Instagram, Facebook, they're coming after DJs muting live mixes. So how's that been for you, knowing that the club scene is kind of dry because of COVID, and then social media with copyrights getting blocked and muting live mixes on social media?
Well, with the club scene, it's been different. You know, I like to call him Daddy Roy. Daddy Roy really clamped it down for the nightlife here in North Carolina. So it's been a little difficult to move around and make things happen as far as nightclubs is going. There are clubs that are open. There are some that are following social distancing rules, and some that aren't. And it's sometimes kind of difficult to kind of navigate which one are and which ones aren't. So right now, I'm very selective on events I do. Usually if I do an event, it's either corporate wedding or I have to be really comfortable with the venue. Usually that means outside. And since it's winter now, nobody's really doing any outside events.
Yeah, because we know once the spring and the summer, the weather gets warmer, we probably may see some folks have yard parties. Now, if you're not from the country, a yard party is go to somebody's house with a backyard, pull up a tent, bring out the DJ equipment, tie a bag around the tree. It's BYO.
Yes.
Bring your own body, bring your own bottle, bring your own bag.
That's right. You got to bring your own, because you ain't drinking up Auntie's special, concoction. She might have that moonshine. You might not leave her parking lot. You might not leave the driveway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, make you want to do the huck-a-buck.
Oh, man.
Make you want to do the huck-a-buck and pass out on your own juices.
Oh, that's a fact. You got to throw on some of that good old Southern soul, and, just get out there. You ain't never, once the uncles get out there and get to drinking, you never know what'll happen. Yeah, I tell you, that's fun times.
Yeah, that Bobby Blue Bland, members only, Millie Jackson, Clarence Carter, play some spades in that Miller genuine draft.
Yeah, get some of them new school slides, man. Woo-wee. Mm-hmm. Ain't no telling what you're throwing, some Pokey and some Marvin C's, throwing
some TK Soul.
Mr. C. Yep. All of them.
Yeah, so for those of you that are not from the South and don't really know Southern Soul is a Southern staple where if you listen to Clarence Carter, Millie Jackson, Boy C, ZZ Taylor, Johnny Taylor, it's pretty much a staple in growing up in the South, and it's after 8 or 9 o'clock in cookouts.
Imagine if Southern Soul is like, imagine if Chris Brown made records. Imagine if Chris Brown was 65 years old and still making the same exact records he's making today. That is Southern Soul,
Southern Soul.
Imagine if Rihanna was your grandma. I don't know why I used the Chris Brown and Rihanna reference. A SZA or Ella May. Imagine if Ella May was like 7, Auntie Ella May or Grandma Ella May. That's Southern Soul,
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this video on YouTube, Burn, but there's this video of this little white boy from Macon, Georgia. It was intermission of, I guess, a little league baseball game. And he was entertaining the folks by singing Marvin Cease Candy Liquor.
Oh yes, yeah. I've seen that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Then you
like,
got Bishop Bull. Another one's Bishop Bullwinkle. He was really big down there. I think he passed away.
yeah,
So yeah, Bishop Bullwinkle was. Yeah. He had the hell now to the now. That one. That was Bishop Bullwinkle.
Yeah, because
he had some records.
Because when Candy Liquor came out, it was one of those records where you had to sneak in here when the adults were around, or pretend you be sleeping. Like, boy, get back in that bedroom. I ain't tell you to come out. I'll bring you some water.
Absolute fact.
Man, I could tell this.
Oh my God,
it's gonna be fun, man. But explain to the people, how did you get started in DJing growing up in Gates County, North Carolina?
Well, my dad was a DJ, and I kind of figured it was kind of in the linearity of me going down that route. And I was really kind of pushing towards being a radio personality. I wasn't thinking about doing turntablism or anything like that or mix shows, but it just kind of came out. And probably I want to say it was my junior or senior year in high school, a good friend of mine that lived literally around the corner in Gates County. And the thing about Gates County is nobody lives around the corner, but for some reason, this guy lived literally around the corner. I could walk to his house, and you can't walk to anybody's house in Gates County. His name is DJ Sal. And, I started, and Sal used to give me mixtapes, and then I would go to his house and hang out. And, there was a time where I was running some stuff, and we used to play his mixes on my equipment. The statute of limitations is probably over by this point, but we're just going to leave it like that, but you could, if you had the right equipment, you could listen to said information that was being offered. So that's how I linked up with Sal. Then when I went off to college, I kind of put it on the back burner a little bit. Then probably around the summer of 2004, I really started taking it serious and got my first set of turntables. And from there, it was just kind of going back and forth, and then doing Serato, and that's how things kind of got started. Right around 2004 is when I really got professional.
Now, for those of you that don't know about North Carolina, Gates County, it is very, very country, very rural. The Great Dismal Swamp is a spot where you don't want to get caught with no gas and a flat. And better have cell phone service.
Yeah, the Dismal Swamp is how you get from Gates County into Elizabeth City. It's a major route, from getting anywhere into Elizabeth City, especially in the northeast corner of the state. But yeah, the Dismal Swamp was about 10 miles long, and it's a 2-lane road. There's no shoulders. So if anything happens, you're literally stuck on the road. There's nowhere to go. Like, both sides are swamp. It's really, kind of not an area you want to be going through late at night. And I have gone through there late at night. And one thing somebody won't tell you this until you actually experience it. You go through the Dismal Swamp and you see lights out, in the swamp. You're like, there's nobody out there. Why am I seeing lights? But it's swamp gas. It's a real thing. And I used to see it because I used to hang out with a guy at a radio station in Elizabeth City, WGAI. And I used to go over there and, just hang out with the folks over there. And I got, I did some projects for high school. But yeah, I used to hang out there late at night and have to drive back through the Dismal Swamp to get back home. And it was not a fun drive. Not at all.
Yeah, it kind of sound like the drive up Highway 550 in Mexico, where you want to get through it when you have some daylight, because at night it's no lights. The only lights that you see are the lights from the cars.
Right. That's exactly the Dismal Swamp.
Now, where I grew up in North Carolina, it was west of where DJ Earn grew up. Now, the one thing I found interesting about both our areas of North Carolina is that we're close to the borders of Virginia, Central Virginia, yes. Richmond, Petersburg, my neck of the woods, and in your neck of the woods, Hampton Roads area, Taiwan, yes. Newport News, Norfolk, yes. Virginia Beach, Hampton. So growing up around Gates and Hereford, you guys got to hear a lot of the radio stations out of the Tidewater area, right?
Yeah. Tidewater area. That was my area, man. Like, and that influenced me a lot as a DJ because back then I was listening to DJ B was big, the Buddha Brothers, I see who else, Baby Drew. My God, there were so many. I think Puff Dragon even was doing shows out there, and there's some DJ Curry. There were so many DJs that I knew from out there. DJ Hutch over at Hot 102.1, and I think Hutch was at Hot 102.1. So was Baby Drew, which was Chris Brown's DJ. He was over there, and there was a few others too. And my boy Sal ended up getting over there at Hot 102.1. I actually hung out with him several times when he went out there.
Yeah, I didn't really get to hear a lot of the Tidewater radio stations unless I went to go spend the summers with my dad when he used to live in Newport News. So a lot of 103 jams, and then of course the major top station out of Hampton Roads.
Yes.
But I grew up listening to a lot of Foxy 107, 104, K97.5 out of Raleigh, Durham. And then depending on what day it is, you would get radio stations in and around Petersburg and Richmond.
Yeah. That is true. 103 jams, the mixers up there, they were really turntable oriented. So you got a lot of scratching, you got a lot of cutting, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to scratch, I wanted to cut, and there was a period of time where I also lived in Raleigh, from when I was about 4 years old till 12 or so. And when I lived in Raleigh, my biggest influence was 102 jams and Foxy 99. This was so long ago. This is when they were still going by 99.1 the Fox. So it was getting people confused because they were like Foxy 107, 104, 99.1 the Fox. And that's when they started changing up and started calling like Foxy 99. So those stations was really what influenced me a lot because I want to be like the DJs on them stations,
Foxy 99, the big stick down in Fayetteville, aka Fayetteville. Now I had a chance to interview Cy Young, who was on Foxy 107, 104 and K97.5, and it was telling me that K97 was coming in so strong that the general manager at the time of Power 97, this was before they switched to 97.1 WQMG Urban AC, K97 was blasting in their studio, and that's how strong they were coming in from Raleigh, Durham, bleeding over into the Triad.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, they were a 100,000 watt radio station, and back then QMG was 100,000 watts, but they were on the east side of Greensboro. So by them being on the east side of Greensboro, they would have a strong signal. And back at that time, K97.5 had a great signal coming out of Creedmoor. Their towers in Creedmoor, and I think about 10 years ago they moved it to Durham.
Yeah, because when I interviewed Cy, he was telling me that it was right around that time frame where they changed the city of license and dropped their wattage. So that's why in my neck of the woods at NC, you couldn't really pick them up, and you can only start picking them up once you hit Warren County on.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. So everything's in Durham now.
Yeah, up until you get around, I'll say maybe you can hear them in Orange County, but once you hit Alamance, that's when their signal starts to go out, and you started picking up radio stations from the Triad.
Yeah, because they were so far away from Raleigh, being all the way up in Creedmoor. They had issues on the south side of Raleigh. South Raleigh couldn't really pick up K97.5 too well until they moved it to Durham. So that was the trade-off. They lost, Virginia, but they were able to get that close-in city like Raleigh and Fuquay-Varina and all those towns down there on the south side, like Clayton and all that couldn't pick them up before.
And what would you say would be the difference between, let's say, radio from the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, surrounding areas, and then radio stations from the eastern side of the state, like out of Rocky Mount, Greenville, New Bern?
I would say Rocky Mount, Greenville, New Bern, they were a little bit more conservative than, let's say, the central part of the state or Virginia. It was a bit more conservative. It was laid back. It was still good radio, though. Don't get it twisted. Like, one of the best stations I heard, from back then was Soul 92. I mean, they were legendary. That station is a legendary, hip hop station. You just noticed back then, they were a little bit more conservative, but it was still good radio, still really good radio, even from them and Kiss 101.9. They were Urban AC. Man, they were Whew, that was a good station right there.
Yeah, because I can remember hearing about Soul 92 from one of our former co-workers, D-Train, because he was sharing with us the story
Yes,
about how
yes.
he helped put Terrence J on, and that was one of the stations that Terrence J got his start at, because Terrence J is from Rocky Mount.
Yeah. That's right.
All right, so you went to school at A&T, correct?
Yes, yep, sure did.
Now, did you have a chance to get on WNAA?
No, I didn't. I actually auditioned for WNIA, and I didn't make the cut. It happens. But yeah, I did. I did audition at WNAA, and I was even before then. I was doing commercial radio back in my hometown. But WNAA was a powerhouse even back then. So I wasn't a mass communication journalism major, so that was already one notch against it. And the style of radio I did was completely different than how they were doing stuff in Greensboro at the time.
Yeah, because if you listen to WNAA, their format to me kind of puts you in the mind of what WHUR is for Howard, where it was more
Yeah.
adult, urban oriented, and not
Yes.
really very student friendly. While at WAG, it was a hodgepodge because you had a mix of people from the community plus students, and depending
Yes.
on what time
Yes.
of day, you would hear hip hop, R&B, Americana, folk, so
Mm-hmm.
it was
Yeah.
a wide mix.
Yeah. WNAA was alumni driven. WUAG was student driven. So that made a big difference in how the station sounded.
Right. And then also you had WQFS out of Gifford College as well.
Yes. And they're student driven. Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. Both of us went to school up in the Triad, and you think about all of those schools that's within that vicinity, like we mentioned, A&T, UNCG, up 40, you have Winston-Salem State, Wake Forest University, and then
Yes.
Elon, and you're not that far of a drive from all the schools in the Raleigh-Durham area. Then, of course, you're an hour, 30 minutes from Charlotte.
Yep. That's right. You could get around the triad pretty quickly.
Right. And especially if you know how to drive, because you don't want to be caught on 40 in rush hour when folks are leaving or going to work back and forth between
Yeah.
Greensboro and Winston-Salem. Because depending on what side of the city you're on, it's going to be about maybe a 30 to 45-minute drive, especially if you're in rush.
It used to be really bad when I first moved here. But traffic has gotten a lot better. It's even better now since the pandemic because people aren't traveling. A lot of people are working from home. But generally you can get around the triad pretty easily, even during rush hour. Now, Charlotte, no. Raleigh, no. But traffic here isn't that bad. And that was one of the things that kind of, lured me to the city. I'm like, man, I can get anywhere I need to go in a half hour, 45 minutes. Can't do it in Charlotte or Raleigh.
So tell us about how'd you get your start working commercial radio back down in Hertford County with was it the River or was it WRCS?
I started at WQDK, which is interesting. WQDK is country, 99.3 in Ahoskie, and the sister station was WRCS, which was also in the same building. Now, what was weird about those two radio stations were they were in the same building, but they had different owners. Usually time you don't see that.
How is that even possible?
So back in the day, back in the late 80s, the stations came up for sale. Both radio stations were owned by the same company, and they came up for sale, but they had two different buyers. One buyer came in and said, well, I only want the FM station. I don't want the AM. Then another buyer said, well, I'll buy the AM. So that's what ended up happening. But, the owners of the AM station had the building and the tower and the land, and the owners of the FM station was renting space from the AM station. So it just made things less complex, just keep everything in the same building back then. But my biggest influence was a man named Don Upchurch. R.I.P. He passed away about 4 years ago, and he was good friends with my father, who also worked together at WQDK. And this was right around probably the late 90s, like 98. I was 14. 14 when my father passed. I stayed in touch with Don a lot. And as soon as I turned 16, it was literally, I came in there. He put me on the air. And, and I was board opping Saturday mornings, and I'll also do remotes for them. And every now and then, if something went wrong, because the radio station was on what they call satellite, so there a lot of times there wasn't nobody in the building except maybe the mornings, where Don did the morning show, and that was it. And the rest of the day it ran off the satellite. And so I would come in on the weekends, run that. Sometimes I run the church services on Sunday mornings. Well, one day I was hanging out in the building, and I was talking to Bishop Watford, which is the now owner of WRCS, and I asked about what it would take to get on. He said, "Well, talk to Reverend Wiggins, because Reverend Wiggins was the owner. This man named James R. Wiggins." And Reverend Wiggins lived next door to the radio station. He actually built a house next door to the radio station. So I got off. It was one Saturday, I think, and I went next door and I talked to him, and sure enough, he put me on the air, and I got trained, and that was and that's how I ended up on WRCS as well. So literally, it would be a Saturday morning. I would come in to WQDK around 7 a.m. Do my run whatever shows I needed to run, and by 12 or 1 o'clock, I would do afternoons at WRCS, and I did that all the way till I graduated high school.
Oh man, because when you get in radio, normally board opping is your standard entry level gig, where if you're going to have a syndicated show run, you're going to be responsible for making sure that the commercials get played, make sure that you do your weather breaks and the stop sets for the show, make sure that the logs are done, and any other automated shows get loaded into the automation system, and be sure to set those tones so those commercial breaks can come in. Now on YouTube, there's an old air check from, I believe, summer of 79 from WRCS out of the Hosky with CJ Henderson.
Yes, CJ Worthington.
CJ Worthington, excuse me. Can we talk about him?
CJ was a legend there in a Hosky. One of my friends, Linda, she used to go by the on-air name Linda Lewis. She's actually still involved with the radio station. She's been there since the early 60s. And she's still involved at WRCS. And I talked to her about CJ a few times. And he was revolutionary. I mean, he was a hot starter. I mean, he was fire over there. And back then, AM radio, they were top 40. So WRCS was AM, they were top 40, and WQDK was country. And what's crazy is the country station was automated. They were automated. They had they were country and automated. And everybody was on the AM station because that's where most people were listening in the late 70s, early 80s. In North Carolina, they were a little later to progress to FM for music. So, but yeah, CJ ended up, I think he ended up moving to Richmond, and he did radio in Richmond for a while. But as far as I know, he's still alive and still living up in Richmond.
Oh man, because I was listening to the air check, man. Hot sounding station. The song programming was very tight.
Yes.
And you wouldn't even know that this was a small town AM.
Yes. And that was the thing. Like, even I got some air checks from WGAI over in Elizabeth City, and they were the same way. Hot top 40 back then. And what was interesting, you talked about automation doing board opping. When I got on WQDK, they were fully automated. WRCS was still manual. There was no automation at WRCS at all. They still use carts, CDs. By that point, CDs was your primary music format. So we were playing music off CDs. Church services, sometimes they came in on cassette. We still had reel-to-reel decks in the control room. Everything was carts. We had a computer there, but they rarely ever used it. And all it had on it was music. There was no commercials on it. It had a few songs. The only time we ever used the computer was when, somebody couldn't make an air shift.
Wow. And back in the late 70s and early 80s in radio, this was the time when everybody had live bodies in the studio from sun up, sundown. And if you could afford it, you had what was called a cart carousel, where you have all your carts loaded up. It'll look like a reel-to-reel, and it'll make sure that everything plays with the toners. But as you and I both know, the engineers probably were making crazy money during that time, since it was unheard of to have stuff run on automation, since you had to have live bodies during that time in the studio.
Yes. That's very true. WQDK, when I first got there, they had a cart carousel, and they quickly switched over to probably around 2001 or so. They were on the Prophet automation system, not Prophet, Phantom. They had Phantom at that time, and that's what they used for a while. And Phantom at that time, it was DOS based, so it was all, it was command prompt. The automation was not very intuitive. It basically just played whatever you told it. But um, but yeah, I had a few interesting experiences with that carousel, and you had to load it just right or it wouldn't work. You'll put your tapes in there, and the machine will run, and then if you didn't balance it right, the wheel would get off kilter, and it would start making all these crazy noises, and it wouldn't play anything. So you had to be real careful how you loaded it.
Man, and we're talking about, for those that don't know too much about the broadcasting industry, automation software, because during the late 70s and early 80s, computers and technology still wasn't there like it is now. So what radio stations used to do was you would have your little box inside the studio, and it would have your A songs, which would be your power songs, your B songs, which would be your mids, your C's would be your recurrence, and you would select the songs based on the order, and then you would look at your clock. Your clock told you, okay, top of the hour ID here, stop set at 15 past the hour, 30 past the hour.
I'm gonna share some photo. I'm gonna share some photos with you over Google.
This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, let's see if this. Okay, so this is the automation system that WRCS had back in the day.
Wow,
that's what they used. That's because there was no such thing as a computer. That's what they used. I'm trying to find my right scene now. But yeah, so that's what they used to play the music. All the music was on those reel-to-reel tapes, and all of the commercials were on the carousels that you saw at the bottom, and that's what they used.
That's so crazy. I couldn't have done production work back then, because you really had to have a steady hand when working with that splice tape and the razor blade.
Yeah, there was one morning I came in to do the sign on at WRCS, because they were a daytime only radio station. So you had to come in the morning, and you had to turn on this big box that sat across from the control room. And I got all the pictures up, and I'll see if I can. The transmitter. So the transmitter sit like this big gray box that sat across from the studio. You had to walk in the building and turn that big gray box on every morning, and I would play what they call the sign-on cart. And one morning, I turned the station on at 6 a.m., turned the station on, put the card in the machine, and it said, "Good morning." And all this tape came pouring out of the cart machine.
Wow.
And this was, so when people talk about in the day with 8-track tapes, and the tapes eating, have to deal with the tapes eating themselves, that was a real thing, and this would happen in radio.
Wow. So if the tape was all garbled and you couldn't play the sign on or sign off cart, did you have to manually come on there and read it?
I didn't read it. We had another one, and I just played the second one until I could figure out what to do. And then after I played the second one, I went into music, and then I went through finding the sign on card again. I had to cart it back up again. I had to put it on a new cart, because that cart was destroyed. The tape had wound all the way out, so it was no good. Wow. No good at all.
Very crazy. And also, American Top 40 was out and still out, but during this time, it was coming in on records. Now, there were stories where they would send the week show to the affiliates, and it would be in the PD's office locked. So the DJs didn't have access to the week show until maybe a day or two prior. So that way you could be able to have it on hand, so whoever's doing the production can do the local liners, local inserts, whatever, what have you. And there was a story in the AT40 book about the 70s or 80s, where a few DJs said that they were coming in to do their shift of AT40, the board op it, and the records weren't out. So it was locked in the PD's office. So what they had to end up doing was kind of sort of figure out what were the top 40 records that they were playing for that week, see if they had them in the station library, and do it manually until the PD came, unlocked the door, and handed them the records for that week's show.
I can believe that. I had that happen at WQDK. I walked in there one morning and the shows came in on CD and they were locked in the manager's office. They were locked in Don's office, and I had to, luckily somebody at WRCS had a key and they got in there and got me the CD so I could run the show that morning. But yeah, that was real. Actually, let me see if I can share a photo of the control room at WQDK from when I worked there. I found that one too.
Wow, this is very interesting. Hopefully, it was a lot better than 99.5's, because our studio, for those who don't know, it was like being in a studio, very small, very cramped. Can't fit no more than maybe 2 or 3 people in the studio, because primarily the AC station and the country station had the big studios. Man, same spin pots like
that's the board. Yeah. So that's the board. It was the Gates, it was a rotary board, and you can see the computer in the middle. And we still used carts from time to time, but yeah, that was the control room. That's what it looked like when I worked there. So you had to kind of figure out how to work things, and it works different from a sliding pop board, which most of us radio folks are used to. So it was real nostalgic, working back in the day. I'm going through some of the other pictures. This was WRCS at the same time. This was next door, So that was what their room looked like, and they had a rotary board as well.
Wow.
No slide pots. So it made for interesting radio, and it worked. It worked. Yeah, you can make great radio with those.
Yeah, you can. You really have to be super tight, because if you go back and listen to those golden radio era air checks from AM stations like 93 KHJ out of LA, WRKO out of Boston, pretty much those Drake Chenault boss radio stations, it was pretty much where radio was very tight, and you really had to know your stuff.
Yeah, so that's what WQDK had. They used Drake Chenault. That was the tapes, and this was the front of the building. That was the front of the building right there. Oh, wow. So that's my first car parked over there on the left hand corner.
Wow! And the studios they were in a Hosky, weren't they? RCS and
yeah. They were right off Highway 42. They're still there today. WQDK moved out, but they're in a little building, probably about a quarter of a mile away. WRCS is still live from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day.
Right. And what was your thoughts when you first heard about the hot hits format with Mike Joseph, where it was pretty much at the top of every hour, you were going to hear the hottest song, no stiff, no recurrence. And the whole point of that was we're going to play the hot songs to death and hopefully keep our listenership up.
Yeah, the whole 15-minute rule with, trying to keep people engaged. If you don't like that song, hopefully you like the next song. The top of the hour, that was it. You played that big song at the top of the hour. That was classic old school radio right there. And even today, a lot of programmers still go off that rule. Big record at the top of the hour.
Definitely gotta keep the people's interest. Now, also during this time, late 70s, early 80s, well, mid 80s, I should say, hip hop and rap started coming into play on radio. But as you and I both know, urban radio was very slow to embrace rap, and the only way to hear it was on mix shows during the weekends, or you had to go on the AM dial to listen to it, like out west on the West Coast in California with 1580 KPY.
Yeah, that's right. Do you remember WPGC up in DC on 1580? Do you remember when they were hip hop?
No.
Yes, there was a period of time when they went by the name Flavor 1580, and when I was a kid in the late 90s, when I would go to Gates County, I could pick them up, and I didn't know where they were from. I would just know I would get to Gates County, and I was flipping around the radio dial. I would hit 1580, and I was hearing hip hop, and I was hearing the good music. I'm like, yo, what's going on? I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. So back in the late back in the mid, this wasn't late. This was mid 90s. Yeah, WPGC 1580 out of New York. AM, not 95.5, but the AM station.
Man, that's so crazy. I just had R-Dub on the podcast and we were talking about Power 1490 that he was involved in out of Tucson
Yeah.
and how it was pretty much a mix of hip hop, R&B, dance, and it predated before Hot 97 in New York went from being a freestyle dance format to full-blown hip hop.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I believe it. A lot of those stations, I believe, were under the guise of Rhythmic Top 40. So you heard a lot of those stations kind of dabbling in hip hop before the urbans would, because as we know, rhythmic stations cater to the clubs. So they were the stations that were kind of like the party stations, because urbans were a little bit more laid back. Top 40s were really in your face. But the rhythmic was kind of the joining of urban and top 40. So I saw a lot, even, you listen to old 102 Jams air checks or Hot 97 air checks, and you're like, yo, it's completely different, but you're hearing party records, what I call party records.
Wow. And there's an old air check on YouTube from, I believe, 86 when 103 Jams went by the calls Wowie, WOWI. And it was interesting
Yes.
around the mid 80s where you would hear the Police, Phil Collins, Madonna, stuff that were pop but had an urban lean to it. And this was before they really started to embrace rap fully. So what do you think that transition was in radio, where we're gonna stop playing the pop urban leaning records and really go full blown rap alongside with your Luthers, Anita Bakers, Sade's, and Freddie Jackson's?
I mean, I was with it, as a kid in the 90s, I'm with it. I wanted to hear my hip hop records. I was tired of hearing Luther Bennett. I didn't want to hear my parents' music. I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to hear, I wanted to hear Chris Cross and, Another Bad Creation, MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice, Snow, Ski Low, all these one-hit wonders I mentioned, Sir Mix-a-Lot. That's what I wanted to hear. Then you get a little deeper. You want to hear some Wu-Tang or, KRS-One, Busta Rhymes, all that, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, because we grew up in the era in music and radio in general where you knew you were listening to an urban AC station because their sweepers or liners would mention no rap, or they would play no rap, or what they would do is they would
strong songs.
Oh man, no rap. Now
strong songs. You're like, what is a strong song?
That I don't know, but the funny thing is that right around the early to mid 90s, if a record had a rap in it, certain stations would play the radio edit without rap.
Yes. And that still happens today. There are some urban ACs that do not play rap. If they have a song that has R&B verse, a rap verse in it, they will cut it out.
I still find that odd because our age demographic is pretty much urban AC age now, and we grew up on hip hop.
Yeah, we've aged out of the typical hip hop radio station. So now we're seeing that a lot of urban ACs are now incorporating hip hop into their playlists. And one thing that's really going crazy right now is what they call the booming format or old school hip hop format. That those are really taking traction across the country, like the stations that have them.
Yeah,
that are doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good mix of 80s, 90s hip hop, because like I stated, we are urban AC age now. We got adult responsibility. So we want to hear the music from our childhood. Now, do you remember when you and I first met?
Yeah. At UNCG. Yeah, I believe we met. I believe, was it Cherie Dennis was in town? Or
Cherie Dennis, yeah.
Oh yeah, I said Cherie. Cherie Dennis was in town. But I'm not sure if that was the first time we met. I think we may have met beforehand because CJ was here. And you took us to my cousin. Yeah, and you took us to WAG and you were showing us around the radio station. And I think the next time we met was Cherie Dennis, where I met Chris Lee, Show Smooth.
Yeah, who is now the lead sports anchor at WRAL.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, because I can remember you, me, and CJ, we were eating at what was a restaurant called Filet of Soul that was on Tate Street is no longer there, but I
Yes.
remember all three of us eating there, breaking bread and everything. And then the funny thing about, three of us is that once I ended up graduating, going back home, CJ was already at 99.5 and called me one day, was like, hey, you want to get down? And I was like, yeah. So boom, there it is.
Yep. Doing your thing. Right. You were running the morning show, I believe, over there.
Yeah,
You did some other stuff too.
yeah, I was doing a little bit of everything. I was running Russ Park. I was board opping for Runner Rapid Sports, NC State, Carolina over on the AM side, and just trying to be indispensable to make sure that they didn't get rid of me. But before I ended up getting on officially at 99.5, this was back during the days of MySpace, and 99.5 had a MySpace page. So I ended up messaging them saying, hey, you guys need an extra hand, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out to be D-Train. D-Train was like, okay, come on down or whatever. And then I came down, never left. And that's how he ended up giving me the nickname And1, because I was always at the station just hanging around.
That's so funny. Yeah. I met D Train through CJ, and D Train, me and CJ had a chat. This is when I first really started DJing, and I asked CJ, do you think I could get on the air over there? And he said, I don't know, let me talk to D Train. I was like, D Train was like, yeah, do it. I was like, oh, word. So I brought my turn. I literally brought my equipment in there one day, and we went live from the country studio. And I guess the rest is history. That was probably like 2005. I want to say that was way back then.
Right.
I was a lot younger. I didn't have the official here.
So was that on the 99.5 jams frequency, and you guys were just broadcasting out of PTM studio?
Yeah. Me and CJ, because CJ was doing a night show at that time.
Yeah, because I was thinking the PTM folks would have had a fit had they heard some urban on 102.3. What is this?
Well, there was something that may have happened that night where we were accidentally routed 99.5 on the PTM. But that's here nor there, and there's no proof of it except for this story.
Yeah, that is the only proof. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with small town radio, you're going to be doing a lot of everything. You're going to be board opping, you're going to be doing sales, you're going to be helping out doing any and everything. And when you're running high school sports or insert college sports team here, you're mainly responsible for making sure that the games get played, make sure that your network and your local commercials get played. And if you had a contract with a major pro team, you had to run the pregame, the game, plus the postgame. So I remember back when the Washington football team was on the sports AM, this was before it went automated. I would go and work Sunday mornings because this was when we had WMVN, which was our local TV station at the time, and they would air
breaking news
Sunday church services. So I would go run Big Three Baptist Church. I would go run Bishop Manning and NC Spin, which was a public affairs talk show, run those three shows. Then go into the AM station, run the Washington football team, pregame, the game, and then the postgame. So I would say it wouldn't be till maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock midnight until I left the station. And this was until we had extra hands and we decided like, hey, I'll run the pregame first half of the game. You come in and relieve me at halftime. You run the rest.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that was the good old days. Yeah, there was nothing that was automated. You had to do everything. The computers, we had computers, but they were very rudimentary. You had to have somebody in there that could do it. This ain't the day now where you can literally, sit here at your house like me and fire off voice tracks and just be like, yeah, I ain't got to go anywhere,
You literally had to do it yourself. And if you're doing sales, the key thing is sell, and don't make a difference.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. There was a few times in a Husky at one time where I ended up having to run the the Sunday morning gospel show on WQDK, and I got scheduled to work the morning at WRCS the same morning. And neither station, to do Sunday mornings on WQDK, it wasn't automated. So I was in there playing the music, and I would have to, and then I realized, oh crap, I got to do the other station too. Like, how am I going to do this? Because they're not automated at all. And it's Sunday morning. So Sunday morning on a gospel station, they were gospel. And then, so I had to figure out how to be on the air on one and the other at the same time. And I made it work. It was a lot of running back and forth between studios, and watching records and making sure I had enough time, but I made it work. It was kind of cool doing both at the same time.
Right. And you also ended up working at big legendary radio station in the Triad area of North Carolina, WJMH 102 Jams, and being under the tutelage of Mr. Brian Douglas, who got his start on WAPE, the Big 8, down in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah. I started at Jams in, I believe, 2008, and that was through Chris Lee. He actually, he was talking to me about it, and I wasn't really interested in doing it initially. I was but kind of wasn't. Like, if it happens, it happens, but if it don't, I just, keep doing what I was doing. Because at that time, I was in the clubs really heavy, so that was kind of my focus, and so I sent a demo to Tap Money, who was APD at the time, and I still remember the first time I met Tap. I went to introduce myself. He's like, "Man, I already know you." He's like, "Come and have a seat." So he already knew who I was and everything, and I was a little nervous when I first met him, but he was super cool guy, super down to earth, and man, like one of the great mentors. Along with Brian, and I still remember, my first few times on air. It was definitely epic. And I still remember the day that Tap called me. He was like, "Hey man, you want to do a Mix Squad weekend?" I was like, yes. Is that a no-brainer? So I came in and did it. And I did it, I think it was Labor Day. Yeah, it was Labor Day weekend. And I did the mix show, and he was like, "Yeah, it's just a trial run. We'll see how it goes." And I was like, okay. So I did the mix show. It went good. Everybody liked it. Then I heard nothing, literally, from September, October, November, December, January. And I told Chris this, and he said, "You need to be a little bit proactive, little proactive." I was like, okay. So I called Tap about it. I said, interested, I know y'all have another Mix Squad weekend, coming up. And he's like, okay. He's like, "Come to the radio station today around 5:00. And I said, okay. So 5:00 came. I was there at the radio station. He handed me an envelope with all my employee documents, and I was officially an employee that day. That's how it happened.
Wow. So it almost kind of felt like they had you auditioning until you said, "Hey, I want to get down," and then Tap hands you the envelope, kind of saying you're official.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And from then I did fill in, I think, till about mid 2009. So I think it was about a year after that. No, it wasn't a year. It was about 6 months, or maybe 6, 7 months or so. I did fill in mix shows. So, so if a DJ couldn't make it, they would call me. And I found myself filling in a lot for DJ Deluxe out of Raleigh. And at that time, Deluxe was traveling from Raleigh to Greensboro every day to do his mix show. So there'll be some nights where something would happen on the highway and he couldn't make it. One of the craziest nights was one night he called me around, I think it was around 9:30. He's like, "Hey man, can you do my show?" I was like, "I'm not going to make it." I was like, "What you mean?" He's like, "I'm sitting here stuck on the highway. A bread truck has exploded. There's bread all over the highway. And I can't make it." And I'm like, "What in the world?" And I didn't believe him until he sent me a picture of bread literally on the interstate.
Yeah, he can't get the bread because of bread.
Yeah, that's right. So it was always interesting, doing that. And eventually I ended up landing Saturday nights when DJ Sound Machine left. And I hung out with Sound Machine a lot on Saturday nights, and that he was the one that him, Young G, and Showdown Coin smashed City Radio. So I was already filling big shoes because Sound Machine is a freaking legend. So I come in, I'm sitting here coming in behind Sound Machine. I was like, yo, I got big shoes to fill because Sound Machine is that guy. So he gave me a few tips, and I just came in and did my thing, and eventually, probably after a few months, talking to like Tap and Brian, they say, if you really want the show, you really want to be here, you got to make it yours instead of making it feel like you're just filling in from Sound Machine. That's what I did. And that's what really, really, got me to that next level there at Jams was, if I wanted to do something, was take ownership of it and do it. And, I really, so many props to Brian because, coming from being a club DJ, you have a certain mentality of how to play records, when to play records, because you're kind of looking for that instant reaction because you can see it. And radio is a different story. You don't know who's listening. You don't know when they're listening or how they're listening. So Brian was able to help mold me into a better mix show DJ, into how to play records that impact, that make an impact, play records that matter, because sometimes, and I see it in the clubs too. Back then, I didn't think about it until, we started having a lot of talks about music and how to play records and how to move in and out of songs, that art of playing hits, playing records that matter, versus just playing songs that you might think is cool. Sometimes it's, in the end of the day, it's not about the DJ. Let's say the DJ's taste in music. It's about what the people want to hear. And that's the thing. You want to play what the people want to hear. So you want to play the records that matter. And then after that, when I got into that mentality and I started to listen and really, really hone in on on his coaching, I ended up with a better mix show. We're talking, even in PPM days, I'm sitting here with a Saturday night mix show with over a 30 share. And that's unheard of in PPM era. Mm-hmm. And I go, and sometimes when I'm traveling, I go out and I listen to other DJs and I like, I know these guys are dope and I'm hearing them do so much talented stuff and they're playing all the wrong records.
Right. And for those of you that don't know, PPM means portable people meter, and that is how radio determines their ratings for their diaries.
Yes.
Because prior to the portable people meter, you would get diaries sent to your home, and they would ask you questions like what station you listen to, what time, and then that's what radio stations use to determine, okay, we're going to put our money towards this drive time because it's number one in the market. And then also, if you hit certain quotas, you get incentives.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's absolutely true. Yeah. PPM really is a really game changer because now you're actually seeing how people listening to the radio, well, let me rephrase that. You're seeing how people actually listening to the radio versus them telling you how they are listening to the radio. Because people back then were just saying anything. I don't know what station I was listening to between 6 and 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago. So they put down their favorite radio station, the big thing that really changed with PPM was getting the accuracies right. And you saw a lot of radio stations really fall because of PPM, because now you're seeing actual numbers versus seeing who knows, whatever they put in the diary.
A lot of inflation was going on.
There's a lot of art to PPM, man. A lot of art to PPM.
Kind of sounds like how back before SoundScan, how the music industry would determine the sales of albums was they would send out sheets to the local record stores and they'll fill out, okay, what's your top 3, 5, or 10 albums selling this week? And that's how they would determine the numbers for Billboard before SoundScan.
I believe it. Yeah. Sounds about right. There's, back then there was no digital way to track it. You had to go off literally an honor system. You had to be honest that a person would tell you what actually happened because there's no computer back there. Or there's no unbiased resource to tell otherwise.
Right. Or you would read the industry trades and see, okay, who's playing what.
Yeah. Media based. media base nowadays.
Yeah, so you can figure out how to counter. Now, about countering 102 and K97 out of Raleigh, they didn't really have a lot of competition. I remember that there was another station that briefly tried to take on 102 in Greensboro, but it
Yes.
fizzled out. And then Foxy, originally, I didn't know this until when I interviewed Cy, told me that they were competing alongside K97 as Foxy 107. It was the heritage station, but K97 was kicking their butts in the books that they made Foxy flip to Urban AC.
Yeah, yeah. Same thing happened in Greensboro with 102 Jams and QMG. QMG was the heritage Urban AC. QMG stands for Quality Music for Greensboro. They believe they became an Urban AC or started targeting blacks somewhere in the early 70s, I want to say. And from then on, QMG has been the station for blacks. And up until 1990 or so, when 102 came on the air at 88, but they were rhythmic. They were rhythmic top 40. So they didn't play a lot of rap music. They didn't really even target hardly any of the audience that QMG had. For a brief time, there was, I believe it was WKSI on 98.7, Qst 98.7. And I think they did go up against QMG for a hot second. It was not very long at all. I don't think anybody even mentioned that, when they talk about, urban radio history here in North Carolina, well, in Greensboro. But QMG, so 102. So when Brian came there, Brian Douglas came there in 1990. He started changing the format some with his consultant. My gosh, his name gets away from me now. But him and Brian, he also put on, the same guy put on WJHM 102 jams in Orlando, if you remember them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember 102 jams Orlando?
Yeah,
the same consultant.
Yeah, because the reason why was because the call letters were so similar to 102's. It's just the flip of two letters.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the Wikipedia article, see if I can find the guy's name. That Jerry Clifton put on 102 Jams Orlando and 102 Jams in Greensboro. The only difference is 102 Jams was in Orlando was WJHM and Greensboro's JMH. So Brian Douglas and Jerry Clifton were working together to really bring in 102 Jams, and that's when they started playing rap music. They were one of the first stations in the state to play rap music in the early 90s. And that's when they really started going head to head against QMG. And they were really kicking tail against QMG. And it really, 102 Jams forced QMG into playing rap music way back in the 90s.
Right.
But they were still the grown folk station. 102 Jams was for the kids, QMG was for the grown folk, but they wanted that they wanted that audience. So, and they kind of played that song and dance till about 95 until I believe Beasley sold 102 Jams, and I don't remember what company had QMG, but both of them were bought by, I believe, either Sinclair or Max Media. And when they were bought by them, they got put under the same house, literally. And that's when they ended up moving to our National Service Road, where they are today. When that happened, that's when the battle officially ended. And QMG, grown folks, they stopped playing the rap, 102 Jams for the kids, because they now, it's kind of like, if you can't beat them, buy them.
Right. And when I interviewed Cy Young, he was telling me that with K97, when he first came in, I believe he came from DC, and he was saying how their on-air imaging was K-Power at one point, and he got that idea from I believe it was WHRK is the calls, K97 out of Memphis.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, Sinclair was the ones who purchased them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's when all that happened.
Yeah, so can we talk about the impact of K97.5? Because to me, they're the gold standard of R&B hip hop radio for Central North Carolina in the Raleigh-Durham area.
Yes. K97.5 has been out a long time. Not a lot of competition there. And they held it down for many years. They still do. I listened to them for a while, and I listened. Being in Raleigh, and you could pick up K97.5, Foxy 99, and 102 Jams. You got a really good perspective of urban radio and just how each city was doing it. I wish I could have heard Power 98 back then, but I was too far away living in Raleigh. You couldn't hear Power 98.
Yeah, and you're speaking of Power 98 out of Charlotte, correct?
Yes. Power 98 out of Charlotte, WPEG.
Right. And with K97, it's because of them I know Grace Jones Pull Up to My Bumper, because they would use that song all the time for their weather and traffic beds.
Well, let me tell you, one song that they really got me on was oh my gosh, I got it on vinyl, but they used it for their traffic. It was a breakbeat record. They used it all the time.
Are you talking about Dance to the Drummer's Beat, Herman Kelly and Life?
No. This is a different one. I got it on vinyl because I used to play it a lot. Oh my gosh, now I can't even think of it.
Ern is blanking people.
I'm blanking because I literally played this record on my live like probably about a month ago, because I had looked for that record for so long because I heard it on K97.5. Every time they did traffic, they played that record.
Wow, and that is so crazy.
God.
And so what would you say would be the difference in radio from Tidewater area, Virginia to Central area, Virginia, like Petersburg and Richmond?
See, I didn't hear a lot of Petersburg. I didn't hear a lot of Central Virginia radio when I was growing up. I couldn't pick up none of the stations out there. I couldn't pick up 92.1. I think back then that was the only station up there, if I'm correct. Was that the only one?
Was that Power 92 out of Petersburg?
Yeah, Power 92, yeah.
Yeah, Power 92 out of Petersburg, yeah.
Yeah, so I couldn't pick up Power 92 because of Soul 92 in Rocky Mount. They were so close together that the only station I could pick up was no. Let me rephrase that, because we had 92.1 in Norfolk as well. So I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear Power 92 out of Richmond because of 92.1 in Moyock, WMYK at the time. Actually, I went through a whole bunch of calls, but 92.1 and Soul 92. So usually time I was either picking up Soul 92 or Moyock in Norfolk. I couldn't get Richmond at all because they were so close together.
Wow. And for Foxy 107, they later picked up the 104.3 frequency once WKTC Katy Country didn't really do as well, because that serves Tarboro and around Edgecombe, Pitt County, that area. And then they decided to increase our coverage. Let's just get the 104.3 stick and just simulcast.
Yes, that's right. Yep. That was a Tarboro radio station. WCPS was the originator of them. Okay. WCPS and AM 760 in Tarboro. So they put on 104.3, and they figured out how to move it close enough to Raleigh where they could still cover Tarboro and Raleigh, and that's how they ended up with 104.3. Right. That was a big thing back in those days.
Yeah, crazy. And I believe there was a good sounding urban AM station that was pumping out of Warrenton at one point. I think the calls were WARR or WAAR, something to that effect.
WARR. And what's crazy is they're still doing their thing down there. They are. Every now and then when the weather's right, I can pick them up here at the house. Usually, actually, this is about the time of day where I start picking them up. There was one point over the summer, from about 5 till 8 o'clock or so at night till in the evening, I could listen to WARR out of Warrenton here in in Winston-Salem, and I'm, solid three hours away.
Wow, that is so crazy. And when we're still on topic of radio, can we talk about the impact of Mr. Donnie Simpson, who just got inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame? It was one of the first big DJs to make big bucks and not be a nationally syndicated radio DJ, because we saw him every day on BET with Video Soul.
Yes. Well, I'm looking up something. But yeah, so yeah. Donnie Simpson was one of the OGs. I mean, he's radio legend in DC, man. Like you can't beat him at all. Like that's like the gold standard. He was like wasn't he first like one of the first millionaire DJs right there?
Yeah, because I believe at the same time he was doing Video Soul. This one he was on, I believe, was WKYS.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly right. The KYS and my gosh, they had an AM station too that was ran by Radio One. So that was all very interesting, you know. One of the last articles I read about and I didn't know this had happened, that Donnie Simpson, you know, really was, you know, an advocate for what happened with the Grease Man. I don't know if you remember the Grease Man.
Was this I know of the Grease Man. Was he on the same radio station that Howard Stern was on when he was in DC?
Yes. He was a shock jock at the time. But Grease Man is still alive, acting like he's dead. No, he's still alive. But no, he said he made some anti-Semitic comments way back in the early 2000s, very, very unsavory. And you know, Donnie Simpson, you know, was just like, hey man, this guy's gotta go. You know, this was before cancel culture, and what he did was successful. You know, it was bad. It was bad. You know, it was a lot of comments of you know, he was talking about MLK Day, and he said, well, you know, why don't we shoot for other people to get the whole week off? You know, that was his comment. And, you know, people like Donnie Simpson was like, yo, this guy's got to go. He can't be saying stuff like that. You know, so, you know, salute to Donnie, you know.
Yeah, especially on public airways. And want to talk about the contributions and significance of this man, legend in the DMV, paved the way for future shot jocks. Howard Stern even came on his public access show back when Petey Green's Washington was on BT and on, I believe, WDCA out in DC. And if you look at the movie Talk to Me with Don Cheadle, Chedra Ejiofor, Taraji P. Henson, and talk about the legend of Mr. Petey Green.
I don't know a lot about Petey Green. I mean, I know he was a legendary, you know, DC radio talent. You know, that's one of those guys, man. Like he paved the way for us, man. Like for real, he really did. And just salute to him. You know, I've seen a few snippets from his TV show. One of the most famous one was How to Eat a Watermelon. Yeah, all you people that's watching, you need to go see the How to Eat a Watermelon video from Petey Green, man. That was
yourself while doing
legendary. It. Yes, you know, he was, you know, it was just crazy, you know, because I'm sitting here watching the show and he's just flinging the N-word left and right, and nobody's saying anything. You know, and of course we can't even do that today.
No.
No, not at all. Every now and then, you know, with just the whole climate of everything, you watch, you know, you hear some NPR do it. I've heard NPR do it before. And you know, a few artists, you know, a few people can get away with it, like Dave Chappelle, but everybody else, no.
No, so can't do that.
So, but yeah, Petey Green is definitely one of the OGs in radio, and DC radio is just so fascinating, man. It really is. It really is. It's just like there was two radio stations in DC. My gosh, now I got to look up both things. Do you remember what the AM station that's connected with Radio One in DC?
No, I'm not too familiar with radio stations in the DMV market, because I was thinking about WAVA.
No, I don't think
that was FM though. What WAVA was. But I'm not too sure about that. But do you think because of cancel?
WOL, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So do you think because of the way cancel culture is now, that morning shows like the Morning Zoo wouldn't be as effective today, because you can't really get away with a lot of the brash stuff that morning show radio on particular formats were known for?
Almost definitely. I mean, it's not, you know, cancel culture has changed the just the whole aspect of a lot of, you know, especially comedians or anybody that's in the entertainment industry. Has really changed how they can navigate, navigate and do anything without offending, certain groups. You just can't do it anymore, and it's understood, sometimes, there's comedy, sometimes people try to, guise racism in comedy, and it doesn't work that way. If it's, yes, there's stereotypes about different races and cultures that are sometimes funny, but sometimes people are trying to say offensive stuff and act like it's funny, and it's really not. That's the whole cancel culture deal. It was just like what the Grease Man said about MLK Day. That's not funny.
Right. And you definitely can't do like what Howard Stern did in Private Parts, where they were spoofing the match or dating game, where it was blank a doodle doo, blank a doodle doo. What do you have up here, Ern? I have a great big. I'm not going to say. Well, I can't say it because we're not on the FCC airways. But this is a wholesome, family-friendly show.
That was Stern pushing the limits of his PD. Him and the PD at that time did not get along. They actually hated each other.
Pig vomit.
And, pig vomit. Yeah.
But Ern, that sucks.
So, yeah. WNBC. I think everybody knows that.
Darcy blows.
I listen to I listen to Howard Stern a lot now since I have satellite radio. And I said I would never buy satellite radio. And now I have a vehicle with satellite radio, and I renewed the subscription to satellite radio. So I listen to Stern a lot. I'm on the road a lot. I listen to Stern is a shock jock. First off, I wouldn't really call him a shock jock. Like Stern is his own lane. Like, there was a ton of copycats that were doing what Stern did, and as you can see, none of them are still doing it. There's nobody left in that category except Stern. And Stern is the GOAT. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Stern is the GOAT. Like, you listen to his interviews, and you actually take something away. Stern knows how to talk to people like they're friends, like they're lifelong friends. He will get the info that he will ask the questions that everybody wants to know, and the people will answer it. It's just like with when Hillary Clinton came on his show, and that was one of the greatest interviews I've heard. And you find out so much about them that that no other interviewer would have ever found out about. They would have never got that info.
Right, and then of course you and I know the gold standard of the radio business, Qst Kasem.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about Qst?
Yeah, Kate. Yeah, why not? Yeah, like Casey was AT Top 40, man. Like that was him, man. Like that was the guy that you hear, and a lot of radio stations still run his old. We have a local here, WTOB, that runs his old countdown shows on the weekends, and I listen to him. I'm like, yo, this is interesting. Just how he rolls through music, man. So pleasing, just so he was a legend, man. A legend. He was
right.
Yo.
And also he was the voice of Shaggy. Scooby-Doo did voiceovers for NBC. Just make sure you have your tempos right coming out of certain records and the long distance dedication. I gotta go to a blankety blank up tempo. I had to talk about a dead dog dying.
Yes, that's right. The whole dead dog incident. One of the local morning shows here, by the name of two guys named Chris. Every now and then they do a bit with Qst Kasem calling in from heaven. And it is one of the funniest bits I have ever heard.
I got to hear this.
Oh, man, I got to see if my buddy over there can send me one of the old Qst Kasem bits, man. They are great. It is gold.
Man, I definitely got to hear that. So there was a radio station out of New York. This launched around, I believe, 83. This is during a time where top 40 radio was considered dead. And New York hadn't really had success with top 40 since the heyday of WABC on 77 AM. Can we talk about the impact of WHTZ Z100 and what Scott Shannon was able to do when he launched that and took him from worst to first? And I believe it was 73 days, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Z100. Did they do a disco stint as well? I might be thinking of a different station.
They didn't do a disco stint. I know in the mid 90s they went alternative, but switched back to top 40. I think the other top 40 stations around during that time was I don't think PLJ was top 40, and KTU was Disco 92 WKTU.
I think the HTZ 100. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, I don't know a lot about them, or it's like one of those legendary New York stations. There's just so much that you can do in New York radio that was legendary between them and what was going on in Chicago, LA, all the big cities. They had some great stations back in the day.
And also, we got to mention Frankie Crocker and what he did at
Yes.
WBLS, and he was one of the first VJs for VH1.
Yes. WBLS, man. They were a game changer. Now, if I remember correctly, BLS was playing hip hop because I believe, I think it was BLS.
Yeah, BLS was playing hip hop. It was Mr. Magic's Rap Attack, and then
I think you could broker time on BLS. I think that's how that happened. You could buy airtime at BLS.
Yeah, I think so. Can you explain to the people broker airtime and how that works?
Okay, brokered airtime is basically, when you hear commercials on the radio, that is the advertiser buying airtime on a radio station. But some radio stations allow brokered airtime where you can buy 15, 30 minutes, an hour of airtime. And you can broadcast whatever you want during that airtime, within guidelines, what the FCC considers decent. But yeah, so you can literally go, some radio station, you can buy a block of time and just air whatever you want to do during that during that period of time. This happens a lot, especially on talk radio stations where you hear like, this program is being paid by Jay Mace. And then, and then the views of opinions of this radio station are not necessarily the views and opinions of Jay Mace. And then they go on, and then, you have your whole half hour to do whatever you want. And then at the end, they'll run their disclaimer again, and you go off, So that's brokered airtime. And when I worked in a Husky at WRCS, they had a lot of brokered airtime. That is the staple of religious radio is brokered airtime. You find that a lot. That's how a lot of church services get on the air.
Right. And then you got to throw in those live reads. This program was brought to you by Jack's Fiddle Faddle Shop, located on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I forget.
Yes. Traffic and Weather is being sponsored by
Christian Berry's Heated and Cooling.
Yes.
And also brought to you by C&W Candice, located on Julian Allsburg Highway in Runner Rapids, North Carolina. And also be sure to go by and visit Eli's Butcher Shop, located also on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Main Street in Runner Rapids, North Carolina, on AM 1400 WSMY, your best in Southern gospel of the Roanoke Valley and Southside Virginia.
And today's show is being sponsored by Lee's Funeral Home, and the studio is being sponsored by Lee's Funeral Home, where the dead come alive.
You can hear this on WDLZ, The River. And speaking of The River, can we talk about the impact of the late Mr. Earl Tulliger?
Oh man, Earl was a legend. I never got the opportunity to meet Earl.
I'm surprised.
But I never met him. But when I moved into the area, I mean, Earl was the voice of 98.3. Like that was him. It was just like, because I was in a Husky in Roanoke Rapids, not a Husky, Murfreesboro, the Husky radio station, the Murfreesboro radio station were competitors. Obviously they're 10 miles apart. They both cover the same area. So what's interesting about them two is WRCS, WQDK was country, WRCS was top 40. In Murfreesboro, WWDR was country, WDLZ was top 40. So they were kind of running back and forth. And like I said, my mentor, Don Upchurch, he worked at both radio stations. So, but at the, I want to say probably the mid 80s on, like Don was the voice of WQDK. He was the absolute voice of WQDK. You heard him on all the commercials. You heard his voice every day. Anybody in this town knew who Don was. I mean, Don was that guy. I mean, and he was a local historian. I got his book. He posted a book on the I believe it's the Lost Colony. He published a book about the history of it. I have it somewhere around the house. I bought it right after he passed. His wife, I don't think the book was completely finished when he passed, and I think she went on ahead and got the rest of his documents together and published the book. But it is on Amazon, so I did went on ahead and buy it. I bought it from that support the family.
Man, that is so crazy. And also Earl Telliger, he was the voice of Roanoke Rapids Yellow Jacket football, and upon his passing, they renamed the press box after Earl Telliger.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. They renamed the radio station 98.3, the Earl. And in Lahosky, these studios are the Don Upchurch Studios. And there's a plaque at the building when you get up to the studio, that has his name on it, his information.
That's nice. I had a chance to see Earl quite a bit because he would come up to the radio station and in Weldon from time to time. We got a chance to chat with him and everything. Always very nice, very professional, and definitely a legend in the Roanoke Valley, or should I say Roanoke Showan area.
Yeah.
And
so
go ahead.
One fun fact about Don and my grandfather were good friends, and my grandfather had a gospel group at the time called the Four Stars of Ahoskie, and Don had a recording studio in Ahoskie, and he put out my grandfather's first record. He actually recorded it. I think they recorded it at his studio and pressed it up on vinyl. And I don't have a copy, or my mom does, but I digitized it for him a long time ago. But yeah, so Don has been in our family for a very long time. And my grandfather and the group, they actually bought airtime at WRCS, and they would come in every Sunday morning and they would sing. Initially, at first, they would sing live for 15 minutes. They would come in, they would sing on the radio for 15 minutes. And eventually that, when they started getting recordings, they bought airtime. And they for 15 minutes, it was the Four Stars segment. And you heard nothing but their music for 15 minutes. And it got to the point where my grandfather had sponsors. So literally, the expense of buying the airtime was already covered by businesses that supported his 15-minute program on the radio station.
Man, that's crazy. And I was talking with CJ when I had him on the podcast, and he was talking about how, our neck of the woods, Northampton, Hereford, Gates, Bertie, was pretty much a major stop for R&B acts in the 60s, 70s across the Chitlin circuit.
Yes. Do you know WYAL 1280 in Scotland Neck?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a 100% black-owned radio station. It's been black-owned and operated radio station since they came on the air in the mid-'60s.
Wow. And Scotland Neck, North Carolina, for those that don't know, one of the few towns in the state where you could park your car in the middle of the street, because there's actually parking spaces in the middle of Main Street.
Yes, I actually went through Scotland Neck about a year ago. Just, I went down there to find WYAL. I was curious about it, and I found the radio station, and it's just a little tiny building right on the edge of town.
And the funny thing about southern radio stations, especially small towns, it looks like it's a converted trailer and hodgepodge mixed all together. Definitely a type of town where you want to make sure you have gas, no flats. You have some people say you're lost boy.
That's a fact. You might get a you lost around these parts. Yeah, you might get that.
You might want to get on out of here before something bad happens.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find a picture of WYAL.
Yeah, I went to WYAL once because somebody had told me it was like an opportunity or something there. I just went by to check it out. But man, coming from my side,
so that's WYAL. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it looks
like all it is.
Like I said, it looked like a converted house, or somebody's has living quarters and the radio station is maybe 2 rooms down.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. There's another little black owned and operated station out in my side of the my neck of the woods, WYNC. in Yanceyville, and they're the same way. Little low slum building, and that's it.
Because I was looking on your YouTube channel, and I believe you posted an air check from that station. It was a black gospel station where they were doing Aries for come on down to WYAL for some good old fish sandwiches at the local fish fry to support WYAL. We've been in business for X amount of years. You can get you a fish sandwich for $3, a plate for $5 or $7.
Yes.
Be sure to call blah 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 blah. The place
WRCS had a fundraiser. The WRCS had a fundraiser when I was there as well they serve food and everything. You go there and buy you a plate of food, and you are donating to the radio station because they're a non-profit. They're considered a non-profit.
That's how we do down south. Fundraisers are pretty much either fish, chicken, Boston butt, Brunswick stew, and then you pass on your live read to Reverend so-and-so on station AM so-and-so, and they're talking their old Southern twang. Now the so-and-so fire department is having a fundraiser for blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah to help raise medical relief. So we ask that you kindly give donations or buy
that's WYNC.
WYNC 1540 AM.
Yep, Yanceyville, North Carolina.
And where's Yanceyville located again?
They are in the northern quadrant of the state, in between South Boston and Danville. They kind of like the midpoint between South Boston and Danville. Right across the line in North Carolina. Right. So
kind of sort of closer to
Roxborough. They're a hop, skip, and a jump for Roxborough.
Person County, pretty much that
area. Yep. That's their area.
So crazy. Now, do you remember at any point, maybe late 80s or early to mid 90s, that you had localized video shows? Because this is back when cable was still not full, and a lot of the public access stations or your independent TV channels would air video shows on Fridays, Saturday nights. And you hope and pray that the big record companies don't catch you, because you're kind of airing that stuff without going through the proper channels.
Yeah. Buster Brown had one on, I think Buster Brown's Dance Party. He had that on local TV. G105 in Raleigh had with some guys over there. They had a TV show in Raleigh as well. I don't remember what station, but yeah, they had that as well. So yeah, definitely familiar with those video shows. Do you remember? I think it was Video TV on Channel 20 here in Greensboro.
Video TV. What year?
Video Mix.
I
think that was around 2010. 2011.
Nah, I was living in my old house. I was back home at that time, so I don't recall.
Yeah. There was Video Mix TV here in Greensboro, and it was a guy out of Miami that was running it here on Channel 20, and they would play. All they were playing was music videos, but in the afternoons they would have live personalities, kind of like a local version of 106 and Park.
Wow. And so it almost felt like locally they were doing what Ralph McDaniel's still doing in New York with Video Music Box.
Okay. I'm not familiar with Video Music Box.
Video Music Box, it was one of the first shows to really showcase rap. This was right around before BT, MTV was really playing rap like that. He actually stated in a few interviews that he actually pitched it to MTV. They turned him down flat, and then a couple of years later, they had the idea for Yo MTV Raps with Fab Five Freddy, and then later on, The Daily Show with Ed Lover and Dr. Dre.
Why did I not know about Video Music Box?
How do you not know about Video Box? That's the question. But like I said, legendary. Uncle Ralph McDaniels is still going on to this day. Pretty much anybody in hip hop made an appearance on that show, and that alongside, like I mentioned, Yo MTV Raps, and then later Rap City on BT really started, to me, the mainstream approach, or should I say, the mainstream's recognition that hip hop was going to be a dominant force in music.
Wow, I'm sitting here looking at the intro on YouTube. That is crazy.
Oh, and I tell you
Oh my
something,
God. So now I'm gonna go into a rabbit hole about video music box because now I'm fascinated.
yeah, but I'll tell you something that's funny about BET. I interviewed Alvin Jones for Unseen VJ from Video Vibrations. So he told
Uh-huh.
me that during the infancy of BET, that I believe they shared studios or something of that degree with WDCA TV 20 out of DC. And the tape operator on occasion would upload the raw tape onto
Uh-oh.
BET, and what was being played over the air on BET was Scooby Doo when it was supposed to be in Video Vibrations.
Oh my God. What about that's so messed up. Oh, I can see that happening though. I can. I
Hey,
really
hey, man,
can.
hey man, it's early back in the day, pre-cable, and you could get away with a lot of stuff, and thankfully nobody really saw your flubs since it wasn't widely spread and widely
Right.
available, because before BT got its on
So, I
station.
mean, mainly because there wasn't no internet. You
No,
know, the
no.
internet was a game changer right there.
Yeah, because BT back before they got its own airspace on the satellite, they would kind of do what Nickelodeon and Nick at Night still do, where it was USA during certain time, and then it would switch over to BT for a certain time, and then it'll switch back over to USA.
Okay, share time. Yeah, yeah, share
Yeah,
time makes sense.
share time. Well, not similar to what Ted Turner did down in Atlanta with the superstation TBS, and then later
Yeah, yeah,
WTN.
WTBS. Yeah.
And as also you and I know, and some of us who are wrestling fans know, that TBS really put WCW on the map.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was the only way. You know, it's the only
Mhm.
way you could watch it.
Yeah, that was the only way you could watch it, because I was telling my wife this, that the only way I saw the Disney Channel back when it was a premium channel was in my grandma's house when it was free preview weekend, because it cost extra. Or I went to my cousin's house that had satellite and they had Disney Channel already in their package. Because I can remember how expensive your monthly bill would be if you were to add this premium channel and that premium channel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a la carte. Everything was a la carte back then. In the
Unless you
big old satellite dish in the yard. Watch that thing turn around and go to the different birds. Yeah, I remember.
Yep,
Remember them days.
turn the G5 channel 20. And I remember that to this day,
Yeah,
because that was the satellite and the channel number that BT was on. And during this time,
Galaxy 5.
Galaxy 5, yep. And during this time as well, like I said, cable was starting to get into more homes. And then if you had satellite, you also had a channel called the Box. Now, the
I
Box was
remember the box. Yeah.
music you can control, and it was kind of like the first taste of on demand, because at the bottom of the screen would scroll what videos they had, the number that you had to give when you called the 900 number, and how much you had to pay for the call. And they made sure if you're
Yep.
under 18, be sure to get your parents permission before calling.
Yep.
And it was
Yep.
kind of
I
like
remember all that.
the first taste of customization.
Yeah. Because in Raleigh, there was a TV station that actually aired the box. So we could watch it off the air. We didn't need cable to see the box or satellite.
Yeah, I had heard about some like UHF stations were airing the box over the air, because the only time that I saw it was when my grandma had satellite.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, in Gates County, like the cable head in didn't run past my house. I don't think they ran cable down my road until maybe 98 or 99. So before then, your only choice was satellite. There was nothing else.
The big hunky satellite dish where you could probably put a skateboard, be like do like a drop ramp and go up and go
Oh
down
yeah,
there.
you could do all sorts of stuff with them
Yeah,
things. But I mean, the nerds are still with it. They everything's free to you can still use them today with something called free to air. So
wow.
those still exist. Yeah.
Now, how did you end up getting into I want to say DXing, right, or ham radio?
Oh, DXing a ham radio. Oh man, you can go down a rabbit hole with this. I was probably fascinated. It was my dad. I remember vividly. My dad was in a hosky one night. This one we still lived in Raleigh, and we were in a hosky, and he had this. I think it was a magazine that maybe Q. I think it's called QST Magazine. It's a magazine for ham radio people. Anyway, they were talking about DXing in there, and they were talking about a radio station in New York on 1560. And, we were just sitting there and he punched it up on the radio and there it was. I mean, just as clear as day, this radio station out of New York, we're picking up in a hosky. And then he starts flipping around the dial and, we're sitting there listening to all these big radio stations out in New York. I couldn't have been 10 years old, so a 10-year-old kid, it was fascinating to me. And that's what kind of hooked me at that point. As far as DXing and what DXing is it's called distance reception. It's the shorthand for distance reception. So what you want to, so the goal of DXing is you want to see, you literally sometimes you just turn to a channel or a frequency and just see what radio stations you can hear. And your goal is to see if you can pick up a station, the furthest distance away. And that kind of leads into ham radio because ham radio, you're kind of using the same stuff, they call it DXing, but instead with ham radio, it's a two-way street. With DXing broadcast radio, it's a one-way street. So you can listen to the station, but you can't answer them, if that makes sense. With ham radio, you can answer whoever is talking to you. So you got to get a license to become a ham radio operator. The test is not difficult. And they have 3 different stages. You have a technician, you have general, and extra. Technician, you can talk on, technician they say is local broadcast. You can talk to people in your local area. General, you can talk around the world. And extra, they give you you still can talk around the world, but you have a few more channels that general operators don't have. And there's a whole sheet that I have. And this is what they call the amateur radio bands. I keep it on a sheet of paper, but you can see like there's different color codes for which bands you can talk on. And, I've used that tool and I've talked to people, around the world, either digital modes or I can tell you, give me 1 second. I could pull up, what they call my logbook, which will tell me, So since I've been a ham radio operator since 2018, I have made contact in 47 countries, sorry.
Wow, that's crazy. So it almost kind of sounds like a high-tech form of CB radio.
It is. Yes. It's I want to call it, you want to say it's like the bodybuilder version of CB radio. CB is cool. And that's where a lot of ham radio people get their start, talking CB breaker 19, talking to truck drivers and everything else. Or, back in my day, it was easier to do that than, have a cell phone, when I was driving, I had a cell phone, but you had to pay for everything. But CB allowed me to talk to my friends without using cell phone minutes, or anything like that. You just had a radio and the antenna. You can talk to anybody that you wanted as long as they had a radio. The thing about CB is the only time it was really fun is if you could work something called skip. And this is DX. And skip is when you can pick up a station halfway. You can talk to people halfway across the country, around the world. But the thing about CB is skip is only open during the summer. So during the rest of the year with CB, you're only talking to people maybe 3-4 miles away. With ham radio, skip happens all day, every day. So, I could literally turn the radio on right now. Well, it's dark over in Europe now when we're filming this. But, a lot of times I can get up in the morning and I can listen to guys talking to people in Europe. And as the day progresses, it changes where I can start picking up people on the West Coast or, and it deals with the sun and all this other stuff. You can pick up people Australia, Japan, Russia. It just depends on what time of day it is. You can talk to different groups. And, tying this all back into broadcast, a lot of times I'll listen to radio stations and I'll park on a channel and see what I can pick up. And one of those recently was AM 1560, the station that I mentioned earlier. Their call is I think it's WFME now.
And where
is it WFME? New York. So WFME used to be QXR and WQEW. They were owned by the New York Times. They were a what they call a class 1 or a clear channel radio station. And a clear channel radio station has and this is AM. We're not talking about FM at all. We're only talking AM. Because everybody's like, AM sucks. Well, back in the day, you had no choice. All you had was AM. But AM radio, if it's a clear channel, they're allowed 50,000 watts of power. And 50,000 watts is the maximum you can have during the day. But at night, what happens is that radio wave will skip. And when it skips, it hits there's a layer around the earth. And during the day, this layer is ionized and charged. So what happens is radio waves hit that layer and they stop. And they just don't go any further. Well, when the sun goes down, that layer appears. And when that layer appears, radio waves hit it and they come back down to the ground. And what happens is you have a radio station that you can only pick up maybe 50 or 100 miles away. Let's say your typical like K97.5. Let's say you're listening in Raleigh to K97.5. And during the day, you can pick them up in Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Roanoke Rapids. At night, you can pick up K97.5 in New York. You can pick them up in Oklahoma. You can pick them up in Florida. You can pick them up in Texas. You can pick them up in Chicago. So what happens is, you have these radio stations that are 50,000 watts and they cover literally half the country. I'm gonna pull up the station I'm talking about because I have a reason for it.
Yeah, because that's the crazy thing about AM is that at night, radio stations like WABC, WLS out of Chicago, they would have national reach.
Yeah. I'm gonna use
radiolocator.com. Good at this. Come on, Ern.
No. I have a different map. But yeah. Oh, I have the right map up. Okay. Yeah. So WFME out of New York, they were bought by a Christian broadcaster. So daytime, I will pull up this radio station out of New York, and you can see other radio stations on the map that broadcast from that. So daytime, this radio station, this is their coverage area during the day from New York. And this is at night.
Wow,
you see the big difference?
Big coverage area.
Yeah. So that's daytime and night. So they actually recently went off the air. They sold their property. They went off the air. AM radio is not really valuable anymore. They sold because the property that the radio station sat on became more valuable than the radio station itself. So they sold the property that the radio station sat on for $51 million.
Wow.
And they just said, we're just going to take it off the air.
Wow. Now, what is the difference in sound between regular AM and I know back in the day they had this thing called AM stereo?
Okay, AM stereo, it was basically it's literally what it is. You have AM mono and AM stereo. And it sounded a lot better. It just never took off. AM stereo, it brought out all the good stuff, made AM radio sound good, but it was just too little too late. And the FCC didn't mandate it. AM stereo was actually invented in the late 50s. It was invented at the same time they invented FM stereo. So they made FM stereo, they made AM stereo, but the FCC said, no, we're gonna, like, AM is good right now. We don't want to mess with AM. We want to get FM radio going. So they said, we're gonna do everything and get FM stereo going. So they approved FM stereo, didn't do anything with AM stereo. Then in the late 70s, the FCC is like, AM is dying. We got to do something. And then they went back to the drawing board and they saw all these people that had developed systems. One of them was called Kahn, Kahn, by this man named Leonard Kahn. He developed a system. Magnavox developed a system, and Motorola developed a system. So you had three different systems for AM stereo. All of them did the same thing, but they just went about it a different way. So the FCC said, we're going to let the manufacturers decide which system they want to put in their radio. We're going to let the radio stations decide which systems they're going to put at their radio station. They didn't do this with FM stereo. They literally had different companies lobby and say, this is FM stereo. Which one are y'all going to choose? FCC picked one. And they mandated that one and sent it on its way. And FM stereo did good. So they did a let market decide with AM stereo, and that killed it. Because when you let the market decide, everybody's going to go with something different. Some stations had Con, some stations had Magnavox, some had Motorola, and none of the three worked together. So if you got an AM stereo radio, you had to literally flip a little switch on the side to tell it which version of AM stereo it had. And most people don't know what, you ask a person, does it have a Magnavox system in it or Sequam, which is Motorola? I don't know. I just want my radio to play. So, so when that happened, it pretty much killed it. So you had these three systems go all the way to 1989. And then in 89, they said, okay, we're going to mandate Sequam, which is Motorola system. By 89, everybody was like, we're done with AM stereo. We're done with AM radio, period. We're going to FM, and that's what happened. Right. So even now, AM stereo is still a thing. It's just nobody really cares about it anymore. I got an AM stereo Walkman here, and I bought it off of a guy who was literally selling on eBay for like $40, and I bought it immediately. Because AM stereo radios are in demand. Like people will pay $400, $500, $600 for AM stereo receiver if you find it. Wow. And I'm like, there's like 10 radio stations in the country that are broadcasting AM stereo still.
Man, so what you think led the switch from music being on AM over to FM, and AM now pretty much being talk and sports radio?
The fidelity. I mean, the fidelity is right there. The audio quality. I mean, AM is muffled. It's noisy. The stations don't go as far. So you have those. Well, I wouldn't even put the range factor. The main thing is the fidelity and the noise. Electrical noise and natural noise is AM. It's naturally AM. So if you turn on a light and you have a radio too close to it, it's going to buzz and hiss. And if you're, listening to the radio during a thunderstorm, you're going to hear all the lightning crackles, crackety, crackle, all the time. You hear all the static clashes, anything you do with electricity. You put your phone near a radio and it turns to static. Near AM radio. FM radio doesn't have any of those issues. The fidelity is clear. It sounds like you're listening to a CD, and the thing is, AM radio can sound like FM. It really can. But the problem is the manufacturers over time, people were complaining about the noise and the static. And when you try to fix one, you kind of lose something else, which is the fidelity. So to fix the noise issue and the static, you narrow the fidelity to almost telephone-like, and you kind of fix that issue. Then you had the issue of loudness wars in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where AM radio stations were broadcasting their signals so loud that they were interfering with other radio stations that were next door. So let's say you have, case in point, you have Canada on AM 740 and you have Atlanta WSB on 750. Well, the government gives you 20 kilohertz of space. So you have from literally 7, so let's say 19. So you have SB is on 750. You have from 741 to 759. That's your channel. That's about 10 kilohertz. Well, about 19 kilohertz each way. So that's your bandwidth, 10 kilohertz of audio bandwidth. What happened is the radio stations would literally, music, we can hear up to 20 kilohertz. So what was happening is you were playing a song that had 20 kilohertz of bandwidth, what we can actually hear, what the human ear can hear, and their radio station might be going from 720 to 760, to cover all that bandwidth of the song. you know, so the government in 1989 said, no, we got to do something about this. So they narrowed the bandwidth to 10 kilohertz. So when you narrow it to 10 kilohertz, you kind of, it's kind of like listening to it over Skype, But the problem is most radios narrow it down even more. So now you're at 5. So your average radio is about 3 to 5 kilohertz, which is telephone quality. But the broadcasters do 10. And 10 sounds pretty good. I guess when we get off the Skype, I can send you some clips of some radio stations. Because I have a radio here that will do 10 kilohertz. And man, the stations sound great. Problem is that, unless you want to buy one of these, which is let me disconnect my antenna from it.
As you can see, Ern has all the electronics.
It's called a software-defined radio. And this is what it is. It's literally, it plugs into the computer. This little box and have my little connectors on it. And it plugs into the computer. And I can listen to radio all over the world. I can listen to radio and I can make the bandwidth wide enough to where everything is crystal clear. AM radio sounds great. FM radio sounds great, but not a lot of people are going to go through the effort to spend $100 on a radio like this. This little box right here was $100. Nobody's going to go out. Your average consumer is not going to do that. I'm going to go to the dollar store and buy a radio for $3.
Yeah, this podcast interview brought to you by Ernst Electronics. For all your electronic needs, receivers, HD tuners, antennas, the whole yards, come see Ernst Electronics.
Then you have to have an antenna to pick up the radio, man. So, it's like, then your favorite radio station has to reduce power because the guys like this out of New York, so because, if each radio station doesn't reduce power, they will all, it'll all be a jumbled mess of static. You might be thinking, oh man, I'm listening to my favorite station here in Winston. Nope, you're listening to a station in Texas, and you're like, I don't want to hear no crap out of Texas. I want to hear my station right here in the city. Well, too bad, So that was the other, kind of nail in the coffin for AM radio was the coverage. The stations just, at night, the stations got to change. And it was when I worked in a Hosky, we had to go off the air at night, to protect, I think there was a station up in Pittsburgh that we had to protect, so literally we had a radio in the lobby where we would turn the radio station off at sunset, which varied month to month. You would hear a station, you would hear the station blaring out of Pittsburgh. We just come in, if it wasn't Pittsburgh, there was a station in upstate New York that we were here. Or Florida.
Wow, that's crazy.
So you got to think about it, and from a money standpoint, these stations were struggling. You got to think afternoon drive for a radio station is a lot of money. And afternoon drive is 5:00 in December. And the sun is going down, which means the radio station has to go off the air right when everybody's going home from work. And they can't make any money because no advertiser is going to pay for a radio station that ain't on the air. So, that was another one. So, but, now the station, the Hosky's 24 hours, but it's so low power, you can only pick it up in a Hosky.
Right. So pretty much almost kind of sounds like how WAG is, because WAG, I don't know if the wattage has changed since I left, but when I was there, it was only 18 watts because you could only pick it up around the UNCG campus. So pretty much once you went outside of UNCG, you couldn't hear it.
Yeah, they were Class D. They were Class D, not commercial. They're grandfathered in. They can't change it. If they can't change anything about WAG's radio station. I looked into that. At some point, probably about 10 years ago, they applied to upgrade and it was denied. And the government basically told them, they said, you actually have more power than you're supposed to. We gave you 18 watts and you're supposed to have 10. or less.
So be thankful with that.
Yeah, be thankful for that 18 you got because you're only supposed to have 10 and somehow you got 18 and we don't know how you got 18. So you better be happy with it 18.
Mm-hmm.
So
understand and be grateful. Now, I want to know, do you know the story behind the infamous Showdown video?
No, I don't.
But
I
it's
know he was at an open
hilarious.
mic. Yeah. I know he was. Yeah, I know he was at open mic and he was performing, and Dana Lucci was filming. R.I.P. Dana. Um, Dana was filming. I think they were at open mic performance, and from the video, you could pretty much tell what happened. He was talking to the crowd, trying to get them hyped. The
You like
like
Pet
5 people that
Rocks?
were there.
You don't like Zelensky? You don't
Yeah.
like
Oh
Mr.
my God.
Ozzy?
All them hip hop acts from North Carolina at the time, bro. Like, yeah, they were great. Those were the greats, man. So yeah, he just, he obviously he walked to the, he misjudged the step, walked over to the edge of the stage and fell. Oh,
What
that
made
was
the
such.
video even more funny was the person that was drunk telling him to get up. That's what made it even more hilarious.
That was Dana. That was Dana.
Oh, for
Yeah, that
real?
was Dana Lucci. Yeah, yeah, because that's who was filming it. That's who was filming the video was Dana Lucci. Yeah,
Rest in peace. And I didn't know about the strong history of hip hop in the triad until I
yeah,
moved up there to go to UNCG, and how the
yes,
Busy Boys, and of course that was the start of Ski Beats, who later went on to do Camp Lo, Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt, and really was one of the first to put on for NC hip hop wise.
yes. That's a fact. And of course, Knife Wonder lives in Winston-Salem. So yeah, so it's a lot of NC hip hop, man. Like one thing we figured out at jams, man, and a lot of dealing with a lot of A&Rs, man, and a lot of artists, came through. It's like they literally brought them to North Carolina first. They brought them to Greensboro first to see if the records would work here, and if it worked here, they moved them everywhere else. So a lot of times we got a lot of first run artists here before anybody else got them. Most notables I can think of like 2 Chainz. 2 Chainz started right here in North Carolina. I mean, his movement started in North Carolina. Shout out DJ E Sud. Travis Porter the same way. Ray Shremmerd, City Girls. Oh my God, there's so many artists that I've met through it. Cardi B, T-Pain, like a lot of these artists, they were coming through North Carolina because that was the hot spot. You make it out of NC, you got something. You bring your records here, you got something.
Right. And I definitely am glad to see where NC is hip hop wise with Rhapsody, The Baby, Luke
Yeah,
Nasty, Stunner for
yeah.
Vegas,
Same,
and
same thing with the
how,
baby, man. Like I didn't know it. I was cleaning out my phone one day and I realized I had the baby's personal cell in my phone. I totally forgot I had it. Because the baby used to be up, used to come to jams like I probably met him like 4 or 5 times. He was always bringing records up. He come back, hang out at the station with us. Eat dinner, whatever. That was the guy.
right, because I always felt for the longest before this wave of NC hip hop, and also we got to mention Petey Pablo put on too.
Yes,
How
yes,
prior
yes,
to all
yes.
of this, North Carolina, I felt was stuck between either trying to follow what was coming out of Atlanta or looking, seeing what was going on in Virginia, where it was like, okay, we
Yeah,
got the Neptunes, Clips, everything Timberland coming out of VA, and we have the whole Atlanta thing in NC. Where do we fit? Because we're literally in the middle between those two states.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Being here in North Carolina, you get the infusion of the North and the South. Growing up, getting my biggest influence was radio. So a lot of times we heard Virginia North. So we didn't hear a lot of North Carolina. About my first experience was raised up. I knew about Outkast and Ghetto Boys and all the West Coast artists, but mostly everything was New York, New York, New York, New York, New York, New York. Then when I got to A&T and I'm getting all these people from Atlanta and Florida, Texas. We had DC folks too. So I didn't learn about I knew about DC. I knew about Go-Go, but I didn't really know about it till I got to A&T and like running all these DC heads. I didn't really know about Atlanta music. And I'm like, when I found out about Atlanta music, I'm like, yo, this is it. I really fell in love with ATL music. I really did. I like New York style music, but I fell in love with the Atlanta sound.
Yeah, but I'm sure back during your club DJing days, the promoter or owner of the nightclub had a list of no songs that you couldn't play, because if you did, a fight was going to break out.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a list, like a physical list. It was just a mental note of don't play these songs, you know. And it was more trial and error than anything. You just kind of made a note, like, okay, I played this song, fight broke out, they started shooting outside. Okay, I'm not playing that record anymore. That came along with when I DJ'd North Carolina Central, and they hired Crime Mob. They booked Crime Mob to headline, and Crime Mob did their whole show for North Carolina Central homecoming, and they did not play Nuck. They did not sing Nuck If You Buck, and this was probably like 09, 08, 09, and they tried to get away with not performing Nuck If You Buck. And the crowd started chanting the record as they were walking off stage. Nuck, if you buck, Nuck. There's a whole bunch of college kids, so they were going crazy. They ran back on stage, and the DJ, you heard, see like DJ fumbled and dropped it. Man, the whole gym erupted. It was the craziest thing ever, because I know for a fact somebody there probably told them, you ain't getting paid if y'all perform Nuck If You Buck. Or y'all better not perform Nuck If You Buck, because they're going to start fighting. I'm like, no, man, these are college kids. They ain't going to fight. We ain't dealing with no drug dealers here, or shooters. These are all college kids. And if they do fight, it's going to be their best friend. Probably be some Omegas.
It's like the same reaction with if you play Bia, any of the Lil Jon, East Side Boy stuff, Crunk Era, and Memphis 3-6 Mafia to the club up.
Yeah, so there's a difference, there's a difference between doing college parties and doing hood parties. So a lot of times you could get away with those. I mean, you can get away with those big hood club records, them big hood shoot up the neighborhood, beat up your grandma records in the college parties, and they would turn it to a next level. You play those same records in the hood clubs, you might get shot, because you're dealing with a different mindset, dealing with the element. Yeah. So, college parties, you can play those records, get away with it. Why? Because everybody's college age, and they ain't, they're not, most of them, even if they came from poor backgrounds, they're not in that mindset. Like, I'm gonna fight that dude next to me if the DJ play that record, they ain't in that mindset. So, but, as time went on, as the crunk era really got, in, and trap era really started getting big, you didn't see people fighting because a song was playing. If people came to the club, if they were going to fight, they were going to fight regardless of what song you're ever going to play.
The song just added more fuel to the fire.
It seemed like, to somebody on the outside looking in, like, let's say a club promoter or, somebody that, or the club owner, especially the club owner, they looked at it like the song is the problem. And the person that is playing the song is the problem, like the DJ. It's not, if, it was the Buddha Brothers. I still remember what they said. There's three types of people that come to the club. There's one person, they come to the club to party. When they step through the door, they dancing. And they don't stop dancing till they leave. Then you have number two. These are kind of the bougie people. They come in the club. They come to look good. They come socialize, chill, hang out. Their song come on, they can party. Most of the time, they're just chilling, but they enjoying the vibe. They good. Then you have the third. They come to the club to fight. They to wish a mother effer would.
AKA the element.
Yes. So that's all they come to the club for. They don't come for anything else. You don't see them, like, they just and you'll see them when they walk through the door. They waiting. They wish somebody would.
You know who they are, and you know what they smell like. Duchess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Philly Blunt. Black and Miles.
It might not even be that. That could be the chill crowd too. That could be the chill crowd. Sometimes the chill folks, they might, I'm gonna smoke a little something, before I get into the club, and it'll mellow them out. So that crowd isn't the problem. The crowd is the wish I wish somebody would, or I know somebody, or somebody call them up. Hey man, that guy you've been looking for, he in the club. All right, bet, pulling up. So my worst fight that I ever had.
Yes, I gotta hear this. Yes, we gotta hear this.
It happened at Music City. The song I was playing when the fight broke out was Frankie Beverly and Maze, Before I Let Go.
That is not the song to start mashing people out to.
That was the song that started a brawl. I mean, not the song started, but that was the song that was playing when the brawl broke out. I mean, there was at least 1,500 people in there. And I mean, it was like, it's like every big bar scene fight movie that you ever want to see. That's what happened in there. Oh, and man. it was like, everybody was like, okay, party over. So people started falling out. They was like, pop, skitty that pop. I was like, oh, nope, everybody come back in the building. So
they went to the car to go get the tool.
Yeah, and this was a college party. This was a college party when this happened at, and some other stuff happened after that, but I'll leave that part out because it wasn't good.
Man, that's crazy. It almost makes you want to turn the music down and repeat the end of Jay-Z's 22 Clues. Where it's like, see, that's why we as a people don't have anything, because we don't know how to go in places and act properly. Yeah. Yo, who said that?
Yeah. Him. I still remember a few months later, same venue. The owner came up to me and looked at me and said, I did a teen party and I played the electric slide. And I had every single kid in there doing the electric slide. And the owner came and the club manager came up to me and said, how in the world did you do that? I was like, what you mean? I'm just playing music, and what was crazy is I was playing all those hood records. I was playing all those turn up records for the kids and they won't fight. And there's a balance to it. As a DJ, you got to figure out the balance, but especially for teenagers, but it was like they had never seen a DJ do that before. And it's just about crowd control. It's about knowing how, a lot of times with DJing, it's not knowing what songs to play, it's knowing when to play them.
Because you are the conductor, you gotta read the room. Now with radio,
it's hardly ever about what songs you play. It's when you play them when it comes to clubs.
Yeah. Now with radio, with streaming and podcasting, how does radio find its place in today's media landscape with everything digital? And kids now are not knowing the idea of having to wait between X amount of time before you hear a song where I can just
you hit the skip button. Well, radio's always been a passive medium. It's a lot of times, and a lot of people use radio to kind of fill the void, per se. You're driving in your car, you turn the radio on, just have it playing. It kind of breaks the monotony of driving. With podcasts, it's a little different because you can skim forward through podcasts. Same thing with a lot of streaming apps. Until you hit that limit, then they're like, no, you can't fast forward anymore. So it's an uphill battle for radio. They just got to figure out how to reinvent themselves and how to figure out a way to engage the audience. I definitely don't have the answer. I'm not smart enough to have the answer. I just have ideas of what I think should work. And one of the things that I really feel that radio is getting away from is actually playing what people want to hear. And, some stations do better jobs of it than others. And this is one of the things that I learned, I like to call it the Brian Douglas School of Broadcasting. Play the hits, play the songs people want to hear, and I travel around and I listen to radio stations like brand new banger. And they play this record that I've never heard in my life. And then the next song, another record I've never heard in my life. Then another song I've never, ever heard of. And then you think about the average listener, they ain't going to listen through 4 songs they never heard. They turn the radio on because they want to hear that favorite record. When you come to the club, you want to hear that favorite record. That's why I tell artists and stuff like, I'll pay you $100 to play my song right now. It's a big hit. And I look at them like, you full of it, bro. That record ain't going to work. I was like, here's what I do. If this record works, I will give you money. If it doesn't work, you have to pay me. I haven't lost that bet yet. I haven't. I have not. I have watched so many artists' records think they have a bona fide hit in the club and it wipes a dance floor clean. Like you can eat off the dance floor how bad that record does.
So
And
was that record as worse as Feeling You? Okay, Feeling
it's not necessary. See, and that's the thing. It's not necessarily a bad record. It's just people aren't familiar with it. I've seen hits do that before. I've seen big hit records do that before. When I was playing Cardi B, I was playing Cardi B's early records. Nobody out here, I was playing these records and it was clearing the dance floor, and everybody was like, "Yo, why are you playing this trash for?" And I'm like, "Yo, this record's about to blow. This artist is about to blow." They're like, "Nah, man, let's play some boozy." Okay.
But it almost feels if they take their cue from radio and others when a record pops, and then you
take it from others,
and it's not really the risk involved where DJs would break records.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perpetual cycle. So, I mean, I've done it many a times where, I've been a little early on a song and they're like, "Man, why are you playing this trash for?" Then a few weeks later, they're like, "Oh man, you got to play that record." And I was like, I've been on that record for like 3-4 months now. You just learning it now.
Yeah, you're late to the game. You're late to the game. And before we wrap, do you have any projects that's in store that people can look out for? A brand new TNT, Saints and Sinners Praise and Worship mixtape, or
DJ Earn church service? No, I'm just kidding. Pastor
Earn. Hockey Day funeral.
But in the Lee's Funeral Home Studios.
Gospel mix show
where we're lit for the dead.
We're full of praise and with the burning bush.
Yes. Dropping another power hits from the Lee's Funeral Home Studios right here in your big city.
Here's a power praise.
Yes, power praise. Anyway, no, what really kind of took the place of mixtapes is podcasts and my live streams. So I'm doing a lot on Twitch now. Streaming 3 times a week on Twitch, twitch.tv/IamDJEarn. I know you can probably throw a link somewhere in there. IG, Facebook, Twitter, it's all the same. DJ Earn, DJERN. So that's where I'm doing a lot of my projects and on Mixcloud as well. So that's kind of took the place for mixtapes. You kind of doing these small one-off podcasting versus, putting out a big production mixtape. And a lot of DJs are going that route.
Right. And I'm sure you're probably doing the earn bounce on Twitch for all of your followers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm using my Twitch setup now. That's how I'm able to, put up pictures and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, man. So you definitely gave all the links to the social media, all that good stuff. So give them out again and give any shout outs.
Twitch is twitch.tv/IamDJEarn, IamDJERN. Facebook is DJERN. Instagram, same thing, DJERN. Which one did I miss? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All I'm the same. I won't Snapchat, but I never use it. Same thing with TikTok. It's like I'm up there, but it's just to park my account. But I'm on those accounts. So if you want to follow me over there too, I will throw a follow back from time to time. So yeah, just big shout out to everybody that's been rock with me, all my DJ fam, you, Jay Mace, for bringing me on the show. This is very interesting. You really had me nerding out there for a minute. So that was cool. A lot of people don't really like, man, what are you talking about over there, man? I don't talk about them gigawatts.
Yeah, man. But like I said, this has been fun. We go way back like 4 Flats in the Cadillac, and you can catch this interview on audio and streaming platform available wherever you stream: Anchor, Breaker, Apple, TuneIn, Spotify, Verbal, and on YouTube, youtube.com/Beyond the Album Cover. And be sure to follow the Facebook group, facebook.com/Beyond the Album Cover, to stay updated with the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, my good friend, DJ Earn. Thank you for coming on to Beyond the Album Cover, bro.
Thank you, bro. It was really an honor to be here.
Yeah, no problem.